All right, when you first start off your photography journey, there's a lot of options for camera brands. And I'm gonna literally say this. Like if you go with one of the major brands that they do have, you literally can't go wrong unless you go Nikon. But if you do choose Canon, then this is the video for you. In this video, I'll be going over what I recommend as the best Canon cameras for beginners, as well as talking about my personal experience with these cameras. I won't be pixel peeping or talking about comparisons of sensor sizes. I'll just mostly be going over the best cameras, in my opinion, that I've actually used and why they're the best. If you want to talk about pixels or anything like that, you can find plenty of other videos on YouTube. First, let me tell you a little bit about why I chose Canon. For me, when I first got into photography, everybody was talking about Canon's picture profile or whatever, and it was literally the golden standards for photography. So I decided, hey, why not, right? And if I'm being honest, I never regret that decision. I still love Canon to this day. Nowadays, it's not looked at as how it used to be looked at as the best camera brand. More so nowadays, it's looked at as the camera brand with the most lenses. And all that, not to say that you shouldn't get the Canon, because obviously I'm making this video because you should get a Canon, but I'm just saying it's not a bad idea to go with any of the major camera brands. You can literally choose any one you want. The Canon look is a little bit softer and less digital, and I really do enjoy that because I don't want my pictures to look digital. You know how like you see these sharp pictures on, say, like on Instagram or anything like that? Well, for me, since I started printing out my pictures, I really enjoy more like a soft look where it looks more like a film camera a little bit. It's not like super film, but it looks more so like less digital. That I don't know how to explain it. It just looks better. Another reason why I like Canon over a lot of these other camera brands is the menu system kind of just works. With the Canon menu system, I just feel like everything is where it's supposed to be. Like I don't have to guess too much where something is because it's under its little knee. And literally all Canon cameras have pretty much the same identical menus, so you can go from any one to the other and pretty much know your way around. Some do have more features than others, but typically you're looking at the same exact menu for any one that you go with. This is the Canon T3i. This was my first somewhat professional camera. Nowadays, this camera would be looked at in like camera years as prehistoric, basically. But believe it or not, majority of my pictures on my website and even that I put on social media were taken with this camera. So that's why I do believe that even in 2024, 2025, this is a solid pick for a camera. I also need to mention that I did do music videos with this camera and it's solid. It doesn't have autofocus, of course, for video, but mostly when I'm doing my music videos, I do like rap style music videos. So I learned how to use the manual very well. So I can use a manual prompt with this and produce a music video, in my opinion, that's better than most of this junk out here with the autofocus. I don't really care for autofocus on music videos. But as far as for a beginner photographer, I feel like this is a very solid pick. I even forgot that it had a pop-up flash. I remember when I used to use a pop-up flash before I learned how to really do flash photography, and I wasn't too mad at this. It's really a solid camera, and the pricing is very, very competitive. I just looked it up, and nowadays they got the Canon T8i, but the pricing is like super whack. In my opinion, I wouldn't get it, but if you can pick up like a Canon T3i for like $200 or $300, I feel like it'll still be worth it. But not the T8i for $1,200. That's not worth it to me. Once you get into the $1,200 range, there's better cameras out there. And one of the cameras that I would recommend for more so that price range is the Canon 6D. It's more pro than the Canon T3i, and it has a lot more functionalities. On top of everything else, it's also not as outdated as the Canon T3i. I took a lot of pictures as well as I did some music videos with this camera too. The battery does last a lot longer than the T3i's. I will say there's no constant autofocus on here. So if you do on top of photos take video, I wouldn't say use this because is pretty much the same as a Canon T3i in that regard, where you'd have to constantly go behind the camera to get the focus that you want. I believe it was somewhere around the ballpark of $450 when I bought it used from somebody, and I had to change the sensor out. The sensor was about $200 to change out. So altogether, I spent about $650 on it. I do believe that if you're buying this nowadays, I wouldn't spend more than about $500 or $600 on it because it is a pretty old camera, even though it's not as old as the T3i. Now, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with either one of these Canon cameras if you're spending like $200 to $300 on the T3i, or you're spending about $600 for the 6D Mark I. They do have a 6D Mark II, but I can't recommend it or say that it's bad as I never used it before. But if you really want to know what my opinion of the best Canon camera is for a beginner, it's not the T3i or the 6D. It would be the Canon R, and here's why. The Canon R uses Canon's new RF mount, and the Canon RF lenses are super sharp, like sharper than the EF lenses. And if you know that Canon had the best lenses out there for EF, they're even better now in RF. They do have a Canon RP as well, but like I said, I don't want to recommend something I never use. It's like the baby brother to the R. One cool fact that I like about the Canon R is that it uses the same exact battery as the Canon 6D. So I was able to swap my batteries from my 6D to my R, and that was pretty cool for me. Because if you ever had to buy a new Canon battery, you know these batteries aren't exactly cheap. So being able to use the same batteries for another body is amazing. Like if I had to buy new batteries for this camera, I'd end up spending about like a good $400 or $500 extra just off of batteries. But the T3i or the 6D, I would recommend those for if you're in the studio doing studio shoots. But this, I can take this anywhere. The ISO on this is perfect no matter what scenario I'm in. As long as I'm not in pitch black, as long as I got some type of light, this camera will always pretty much produce exactly what image I want with minimal grain. Like the Canon T3i, I was seeing grain about 600 ISO, and the Canon 6D, I was seeing it about 800 ISO. With the Canon R, I could take it up to ISO 3200 and still no grain. So for me, I like it for when I'm going outdoors, and I wouldn't run the same risk with the Canon T3i or the 6D as I would with the R at night taking photos.